everybody, to our 37th AGM. It's great to have you joining us either here in St Albans or via our live online streaming, wherever you may be in the world. We require a quorum of 30, and I declare this meeting quorate. For those of you who don't know, I'm Sue Cherry, and it's been my honour to serve as your chairman for the past year. If you've attended an AGM before, you'll notice we've chosen to do things a little differently this year via our office here in St Albans. We were keen to offer the opportunity for more people to join us and to take part without the need to travel. We also wanted to keep costs down. If you're joining us online, there will be opportunities through the meeting to ask questions via our website. Our governance officer, Jane Roberts, is manning the computer and will ensure you get an answer to any question you may wish to ask. I would like to extend a particular warm welcome to Rod Mitchell, our Vice President. We've received a number of apologies. I wish those facing or recently having had surgery a speedy recovery. Those running events for our cause a successful day, and those on holiday or personal engagements, I hope you have a lovely time. Here is the outline of the business. We have a few updates and items we need members to vote on. These will be apparent through the meeting. Can I remind you that only members of the charity are eligible to vote? If you're watching us online, you will have been sent details of how you can do this. In order to fully capture the votes, we'll be adding those in the room to those online and announcing the results as soon as possible. We start with the minutes of our last AGM, which was held on Saturday, the 4th of June 2016. These have been online. They're proposed by myself as an accurate record and seconded by Deborah Hodges. Are there any requests for an amendment? Jane, any online? No. Okay. Then I ask the members of the charity to approve the minutes of our 36th annual general meeting. All those in favour? Jane? Yeah. Anyone against? No. Any abstentions? No, thank you. I'm pleased to approve the minutes of our 36th AGM as an accurate record of the meeting. We move now to my report for 2016. I was delighted to be selected as your chairman, to be given the opportunity to work with our Chief Executive, David Barker, to lead Crohn's and Colitis UK at this exciting time in its evolution. The scope of my presentation is to tell you a little about myself, to talk about my first year as your chairman, what we have done, to share in our evolution, how we work together, to highlight some of our achievements in 2016, and share my focus for the coming year. Sue Cherry. When I decided to leave paid employment to devote my time to volunteering, I was clear I wanted to be involved in charities and activities I was passionate about. I am passionate about bowel disease. I have witnessed firsthand the distress and suffering inflammatory bowel disease can cause. In 1999, my dear husband nearly lost his life to what was described as at the time as Crohn's colitis, and a close friend suffered from Crohn's disease. I believe my experience, values and skills match the requirements of Crohn's and colitis at this moment in time. My style is to offer strong, inclusive leadership. I believe that a leader who is non-executive must inspire and support the executive team to give them confidence to do their best for our charity. I've built relationships in which everyone is clear about the part they're required to play in delivering our vision and strategy. With the Board of Trustees, I promote a culture that encourages participation, openness, support and appropriate challenge. I've met with the trustees to listen to their views and share feedback, of which I'm a fan. At this point, I would like to thank the trustees for all they do for our charity, giving their time and expertise. We're fortunate to have such a talented group of individuals. I would also like to thank David, the SLT and the board for the support they've given me personally during my first year. Moving on to what has been the focus of my first year. My overarching objective has been to focus the work of the charity to deliver the highest possible impact by anyone affected by inflammatory bowel disease. I saw my role defined under 6 headings: leadership, which I've already talked about, strategy, performance, risk, money, and governance. Strategy. David and I agreed it was time to review our strategy. Work began in January, and David will share more of this later. Performance. Charities in the UK have never been under such scrutiny. It is our responsibility to see that Crohn's and Colitis is run in a professional and business-like manner, which we do. Risk. I need to be satisfied that the major risks to the charity have been identified. We, the board, know what they are and how they're being managed. Money. We are given every penny we receive by someone who wants us to make a difference and ultimately find a cure for inflammatory bowel disease. The night before my first ever board meeting, I read our magazine about Tracy. Now, when I shared what I was going to say to you today with a colleague, she said, "Sue, you're always going about Tracy. Have you not got somebody else?" And I said, and I thought about it, and I thought, well, she is right. But what I realised was Tracy, for me, has become to epitomise everybody who raises money for us. And the bottom line is, if I ever meet a fundraiser, I want to be proud of how we've used the money that they have raised. I want to further develop a culture where value for money is at the heart of everything we do. Governance, a word that has grown in prominence in recent years. The Charity Commission's Code of Governance is in its 3rd edition and was reissued this year. It states, good governance in charities is fundamental to their success. It enables and supports a charity's compliance with the law and relevant regulation. It also promotes a culture where everything works towards fulfilling the charity's vision. We focused on this and have made significant progress. Going forward, we have a structure and resource in place to give us confidence that the governance of Crohn's and Colitis UK is firmly in place. I've talked about what we do, but of equal importance is how we work, living our values in all we do. Our executive team came to us in the autumn of 2016, saying that it was time to review our vision, mission and values. In light of the optimism around the opportunities we now see for the future development of the charity. You're going to hear more about our new values later, but as your chairman, I want to reassure you that the revision is, as you see here, building on the past. We have a strong 35-year history. The world is moving and we must keep up. If we just look at our values here for a moment, you can see very much that we have built on the past. Excellence and empowerment. To be excellent, to me, you've got to be ambitious. You don't accept just what you're doing now. Empowerment, yes, again, we need everybody who is involved to feel that they can go the extra mile, that they can bring innovation and initiative. They're not just being told what to do. So yes, we are ambitious. Compassionate goes without saying. To be involved in any way with Crohn's and Colitis UK, you have got to have compassion. And Stronger Together builds on the words that we had here, collaboration and inclusion. Stronger Together, if you think about it, the staff team are a tiny microcosm of the number of people actually affected by inflammatory bowel disease. If we were to multiply that up, 60 people, I like to think of it as building blocks, sit at the bottom, then if we don't know exactly how many people suffer from the disease, but conservatively 350,000 and more. For each of those, they have a family, they have friends. So we can get to 1 million without looking at the NHS, policymakers, with all the wonderful people who are engaged with us. And really, Stronger Together means actually, as a charity, we need to get out and engage with all of them. You imagine if we had 1 million people in the UK banging the drum about Crohn's and colitis, how much more impact we could have. So we feel that those values actually speak to what we're about now as a charity. We are ambitious, we are compassionate, and we are stronger together. In the boardroom, we remind ourselves, just to show they're alive and kicking, James and I made these, which actually each board member has, and we look at these when we are making decisions. So it actually reminds us to say, you know, are we doing what we are asking everybody to do? Because in my opinion, this work starts at the top. So, where is our sense of optimism and opportunity coming from? Quite simply, the growth of our charity over the last few years. The need for us to constantly look at how we can deliver the greatest possible impact for people affected by the disease. You may have already read our annual report for 2016. It's a very encouraging read. And as you will have seen, David and I chose to entitle our introduction to the review as A Year of Achievement. The numbers speak for themselves. We've seen a growth across the board. There are far too many to mention, but I'll just pick out a few of my highlights. Membership up by 12%. This is the first time in 16 years we've seen such significant growth. We're now, at the end of 2016, at 32,000. Over £500,000 worth of research funded, some new exciting partnerships have been built, and the launch of a dedicated section in our website to help drive patient involvement in research. A 51% increase in our patient information. A staggering 440,000 items were distributed to people requiring information. Calls to our support line were up by 36%. And we had a successful trial of our online chat service. The launch of our, get your teeth in, Not Every Disability is Visible campaign has seen tremendous success across the UK supermarkets. Over 19,000 emails were sent by you, our supporters, to help effect this simple change to the signage for accessible toilets. We're now concentrating our efforts on the travel sector. Our digital strength has continued. We've had another significant year of growth and innovation in our digital work, including a series of very popular Facebook live sessions. Our policy and influencing work has ensured that our More IBD Nurses, Better Care campaign has continued to make impact. In addition, thanks to our responses to a number of consultations made by NICE, we are assuring that the voice of the patient is heard loud and clear when decisions are made around drugs. A significant amount of these successes would not have been possible without our 50 networks of volunteers who have worked tirelessly to run 638 events across the UK, reaching approximately 20,000 people. And they have raised a staggering £165,000. On behalf of the board, I'd like to give you all a huge thank you. In order to achieve this growth in funds, we're investing greater resource in our fundraising efforts. More money we raise, the more we can do for people affected by Crohn's and colitis. We are indebted to all our amazing fundraisers across the UK. Our fundraising strategy, agreed by the Board of Trustees, identified some areas of fundraising we haven't traditionally undertaken, direct marketing being one of these. Over last year, you may have seen us trying new things with new messages, as well as ramping up our nationwide events programme. Our Walk It programme was a tremendous example of this, having seen over 3,000 people come together in 2016 to raise spirits, share stories, and to raise a phenomenal £350,000. I could go on, and there are indeed many other achievements we're proud of, and you can read about these in our annual report. This leads me to my focus for 2018. You're going to hear from David about our new strategy. We've called it Delivering Greatest Impact. That's what we're focused on, delivering greatest impact. The board and I can assure you, are absolutely focused on this. As I hope you've seen from what I've talked about, that you feel confident that we will live the values of the charity going forward, that together we are ambitious, we are compassionate, and we know we are stronger together. Thank you. I'd now like to hand over to our Honorary Treasurer, Tom Reddy, who will talk through some of the financials of last year. Tom.
Hi everybody, I'm Tom Reddy, the Honorary Treasurer, and it's my pleasure to present the 2016 Annual Report and Financial Statements. So without further ado, firstly a few highlights. During the year we've enjoyed strong income growth, which has allowed us to further increase our spending on our charitable objects, but it's also added to our reserves, placing us in a strong position as we go forward. Our balance sheet is extremely robust, which is important, as we'll see later, given that we do have some big spends coming in 2017 and 18. So the next slide here shows our statement of financial activities, which for anyone not familiar with charitable accounting is effectively our profit and loss account. So we can see from this, income has increased 18% from 4.2 million to just under 5 million. Expenditure is up from 4.1 million to 4.5 million. The result of this is that we've effectively saved up 517,000 during the year. And you can see the impact of this on the balance sheet, which is that our total funds at the very bottom there, the net of our assets and liabilities has increased from 3.1 to 3.6 million. I just want to point out, sort of one of the key drivers of this, or one of the important drivers, was legacies, and in particular towards the end of the year, we received confirmation of two quite significant legacies, which added to both the income and to the funds figures. So what I'll do now is go through each section in a little bit more detail. So starting with income, which, as I said a minute ago, has increased by 18%. The good news for me is that income's up across the board, as we've seen the strategies put in place by the charity bear fruit. The graph here shows that the largest contributor was legacy income, as I alluded to a minute ago, which was up 49%. But it's also really pleasing to see double-digit growth across all areas. And I really appreciate that much of this comes from supporters such as yourself, so it'd be remiss of me not to take this opportunity to publicly thank everyone for their contributions. And of course, this is just the money side of it. You know, there's also all of the time and volunteering and other efforts that people put in. So if we go to the next slide, to expenditure, our spend is up 389,000, or 9% year on year. We've been increasing spend across most areas of the charity, which is obviously positive, as it means that we're putting funds to use right across all of the areas that we want to. And what I'll do is I'll just pull out a couple of observations on some of the larger numbers here. Firstly, fundraising. Fundraising is in itself not a charitable object, but the reality is it costs money to make money. So we very closely monitor the return we make on our fundraising spend. Our income to investment ratio, i.e. the cost of fundraising versus what we actually make, is roughly 4 to 1, which is very competitive against many other charities. Next, grant making. Grant making is down during the year. But that reflects a particularly large grant that we made in 2015 in relation to the UK IBD registry. So our 2016 spend is more in line with our historic levels, but we are planning to increase our research spend over the coming years. Marketing and communications next, and this is one I sort of like to point to because as a term it's something of a misnomer. As much of this spend helps us, it's not just about branding, in the form of advertising as sort of companies in the private sector would think of it. Much of this spend helps us directly fulfil our charitable objectives, such as developing and delivering our information and publications that directly support our patients. And it also includes our digital work, such as our website and our social media, where we've seen tremendous progress in supporting and building our community over the last couple of years. And then finally, staff costs at the bottom. Doesn't actually show the figure here, which is 1.7, but it is, again, an important figure that we monitor closely. A significant number of our staff are directly delivering our charitable work, such as manning the helplines, producing information, publications, and all those sorts of activities. Others are helping us to manage and grow and run the charity, such as our finance team and our fundraising team. Without our staff, the charity simply couldn't do the work that we want to do. Again, we closely monitor it and we look at our ratio. The ratio of our income to staff costs is 34%, which compares well to other charities. So moving to reserves, and I want to talk a little bit about reserves because I'm acutely conscious that whilst it's good news that we have a very sound balance sheet, for every pound that we've saved here, this is of course a pound that a support has given us that we haven't yet spent. So again, we monitor our reserves levels very closely, and during the last year we've taken action to accelerate the spend down of reserves. I personally feel there's a fine line to tread because we don't want to overcommit ourselves with costs that cannot be sustained if we had any blip in our income. But we do, of course, want to spend as much as we can on the things that the money has been given to us for. I do think this graph's quite telling because what it shows is that whilst our reserves have crept up over the last few years, the pace of growth of the reserves is well behind income. In other words, we're spending most of the increase in income that we've had. I also show at the bottom of the slide the breakdown of reserves. Total funds of 3.6. 259,000 is restricted, so we have to spend that on a particular purpose. 1.4 million of that is designated, so we've chosen to spend it on a particular purpose. And some of this is effectively savings for known costs that we have coming soon. And then 1.9 million is unrestricted. And we have a policy that says we want this number to be at 16 weeks worth of running costs. At present, we're a bit above that at 22 weeks, well, I say at present, at the point of the accounts. But as I said a minute ago, we have spend down plans to try and bring this back down to the level that we want it to be at. So coming on to the outlook for 2017. We are looking to overspend this year with a planned deficit of 329,000 to return our reserves to our targeted level. And we have a number of key projects, and the slide, I won't repeat them all, but the slide shows a few here. Some of these are campaigns that will directly further our impact. Others are crucial to prepare and protect ourselves for the future. And in particular, we have a key project in place to update our IT systems. And also in 2018, we will need to relocate as the lease on this building expires. And whether we like it or not, this will bring some moving costs. We also plan to further increase our capacity, both to deliver the services we want to deliver at greater levels and to further grow the charity and our income levels through tapping into a wider range of supporters. So, in summary, the good news is that we're in a great position today with money in the bank, but we want to spend that money, and as you've heard from Sue and we'll hear from David, we have plans to do that. Finally, it's not written down here on the slides anywhere, but an additional sort of agenda item for David and myself over the next few weeks will be, well, weeks and months probably, will be to recruit a new finance director. Ian, who is here somewhere, where's Ian? At the back there. Ian will soon be leaving us to take a short break from work, and so I just want to take this opportunity to thank him for the huge contribution he's made over the last couple of years in bringing forward the finance and the corporate services function. So thank you, Ian. So that's all I was planning to say. which brings me to the business end of my section, which is 2 voting items. Firstly, the adoption of the accounts, and secondly, the reappointment of WMT as our auditors. Before I do this, just wanted to pause very quickly to give everyone the chance to ask any burning questions they may have on the finances, either in the room or Jane, if there's anyone online at all. No, I should say anyone here, if you have any questions and want to ask me about them, I will be around afterwards. Oh, we do have a question there.
Yeah, my name's John Payne. Thank you. My name's John Payne. I'm a member with Crohn's, living in Oxford and very much involved in fundraising there. I just wanted to pick up on the comment you made about this office and the fact that the lease is going to be up. Is it not possible to extend the lease and therefore to reduce the cost for finding somewhere else?
So we've, thank you. That's absolutely one of the options we've looked at. And unfortunately, it's not, I can't remember exactly what happened with it, but the, well, actually, David, you're probably in a better place. Yes, get David a microphone.
Otherwise, people online will just hear silence. So that is an option we've looked at. This building here is being sold and they're looking to license it for residential. The other thing in this building that we really did look at hard is we want our next lease to be a long-term 10-year plan. And actually, if we were to stay here, we would want a serious commitment from them, because actually, although we've managed to make our office look lovely with colour on the walls, this is a tired old building. So unless there was a commitment for investment in the facilities within the charity, so actually we don't believe it's a reasonable option. It would have been ideal if it could, but sadly it's not.
Yeah, I mean, we've been through, well, we continue to go through a sort of a pretty robust process to work out our relocation options. One of the things that was talked about last year was about whether we should buy a property. That's one of the things that the board sort of explored in some detail. And I think, you know, the conclusion, and certainly my personal view, was that whilst, you know, buying is in some ways a saving for the future, at the end of the day, you know, we're not here as a property investment company. We're here as a charity to spend money on Crohn's and colitis. Hence, we think, or the likely route is that we will be taking another lease, hopefully from mid-2018. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question online from which Jane is going to read out.
Yes, Sarah H. has asked, what do you think is the most important project that Crohn's and Colitis UK plan to deliver next year to support people with Crohn's and colitis?
Ooh, that's $1 million question. There's all sorts of different projects we could point to. One of the fascinating things for me coming out of a board away day that we did earlier in the year was asking what different members of the board, and ultimately went out through the survey, which I think David's going to talk about in a little bit, what was important to people. And the simple answer is, you know, everybody had a different view. And because one of the things, again, as part of that discussion was, do we do too many different things? And I think the conclusion we've come to is all these things are important to different people for different reasons. And on the basis that it's those people who are giving us their money to spend on trying to sort of further our cause, actually what we need to do is find the right balance, you know, of how we spend our money to try and do all of the positive things that people want us to do. For me personally, I wouldn't point to a particular project. For me, the big thing is about what can we do to raise awareness. You know, I think awareness is the absolute number one thing we should do, and actually that comes from a huge range of our projects, whether that's through the digital side or the publications we produce, all of the sort of drum banging we do with the politicians and in Parliament. You know, so without wishing to sound like I've avoided the question slightly, I don't want to point to a particular project. I would rather think about how they work together to come to sort of an outcome for us. For me, as the Treasurer, there's some really important projects that we need to do here, in particular the IT spend and the relocation, which, you know, whilst they're money that in an ideal world you wouldn't have to spend, they're crucial to allow us to continue doing all of the sort of, or meeting all of the charitable objects directly. Does that answer the question? Hopefully it does. I'm not sure if we're going to get that feedback. Any other questions? Should we move on to the votes? So to the votes. Firstly, the 2016 accounts are proposed by myself as a true and fair report and seconded by Alan Thackeray. I ask members of the charity to approve the adoption of the annual audited accounts and report for the financial year ended 31st of December 2016. So firstly, all of those in favour, please. All right. Anyone against? No. Any abstentions? Very good. I'm therefore pleased to adopt the annual reports, the annual accounts and report for 2016. Thank you. I'm getting a bit of feedback. Where it's coming from. And the other area to vote on is to approve the reappointment of Williamson Morton Thornton LLP as auditors of the charity and to delegate authority to the trustees to set the remuneration of the auditors. So all of those in favour, please. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Jane, I didn't ask you the time. Any votes from online as well?
It has been unanimous online as well as in the room.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm therefore pleased to announce the reappointment of Williamson Morton Thornton LLP as auditors of the charity. So thank you very much, everyone. I will hand over now to our Vice Chairman, Alan Thackeray, who will oversee the next agenda item being the re-election of trustees.
Thank you, Tom. We now come to the re-election of 3 of our trustees whose current term of office comes to the end at the end of this year. As trustees, we are eligible to serve for a maximum of 3 terms of 3 years, and I'm delighted that Sue Cherry, Caroline Silke and Deborah Hodges have all agreed to stand for re-election for another term. And now we would like to take the vote for Sue Cherry to be reappointed. Those in favour? Those against? Online? One online. Excellent. Reappointed. Congratulations. Thank you. And Caroline Silke? Those in favour? Against? And online. Okay. Reappointed. And Deborah Hodges? Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? No. Reappointed. Thank you. I would now like to hand the proceedings back to our chairman, Sue Cherry.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you for re-electing me back onto the board. Our next item of business is a special resolution to revise our Articles of Association. Our Honorary Secretary, Sarah Denislow, has been leading this piece of work, but is unable to be here in person. She's made a short video outlining the work that has been undertaken. She covers why we wish to make some of these changes, what is being proposed, how we have consulted our members and experts, and the changes proposed. Over to Sarah.
Hello, my name's Sarah Denslow. I'm trustee and honorary secretary.
Hello, my name's Sarah Denslow. I'm trustee and honorary secretary at Crohn's and Colitis UK. I'd like to talk to you about some changes that we're proposing to the charity's governing documents that we'd like to invite you to vote on this morning. Charity's governing documents are legally binding and include information on how a charity should be run, such as how many trustees there should be, how long trustees should serve, and how key decisions should be made. Our governing documents were drawn up some years ago, and since that time they've grown with the charity, with various clauses added and changes made as the organisation has grown and developed. And as a result, although the documents are still legally sound, they've become quite long, a bit clunky in places, difficult to navigate, and contain a fair bit of information that's not really relevant for the charity anymore. So we'd like to update them. We'd like to make the document simpler, shorter, and easier to use, and at the same time make sure that it's fully up to date with best practice guidelines from the UK Charity Commission and others. We've been really pleased to involve members throughout the review process, starting with a small panel of members which went through the document with a fine-tooth comb, checking every clause, and for the last couple of months a revised version of the document which is being proposed today has been available on the Crohn's and Colitis UK website for members to download, read and comment on. on.
Charity lawyers.
We've also had input from charity lawyers, Bates, Wells and Braithwaite, and from Dorothy Dalton, who is a UK charity governance specialist and who knows the organisation really well. So what are the changes that we're proposing? Well, as I've explained, the key changes are around shortening and simplifying the document as much as we can. And we've moved the various sections of the document into one comprehensive whole and included plenty of signposting so that anyone who's reading it, whether it be a member, a trustee, a member of the charity staff team, an advisor, anyone else, should be able to quickly and easily find the information that they're looking for. Other changes that we're proposing are around the charity's name, so we've updated any references to the charity's name from NAC to Crohn's and Colitis UK. We've also cleaned up some of the wording around trustee involvement, particularly clarifying the process for trustees' retirement and re-election by rotation, and making sure that the board is able to kind of remain fresh and best meet the governance needs of the charity. On groups and membership, we have removed quite a lot of the detailed wording on
that information into separate policies and procedures outside the main governing documents, which will be both simpler and more agile, and also make it easier for that information to be accessed by anybody who wants to see it. We've also thought long and hard about how best to involve members in decision making and how we can give members the greatest opportunity to get involved in having their say. And so we're proposing to introduce some flexibility around whether or not a formal annual general meeting is the best way of doing that, or whether there could be other things that we could do, other methods we could use, such as virtual meetings, online or postal polls, which might enable a greater number of members to get involved and have their say. And finally, we've strengthened the section around conflicts of interest, which is bringing our recommendations, our guidelines, in line with the recommendations of the UK Charity Commission. So the result of all of this is a shorter, simpler, we hope, document which is easier to use and easier to navigate, and which we hope will serve the charity well in the coming years. We welcome any questions that you might have before we ask you to move to vote on the new version. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Here is the resolution that's being proposed that we adopt. Are there any questions in the room or online? No. Okay, if there are no questions, I would like to ask members of the charity to approve the special resolution for the adoption of the revised articles, proposed by Sarah Dennislow and seconded by Caroline Silk. All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. I'm therefore pleased to adopt the revised Articles of Association. I would now like to hand over to David, our Chief Executive, who will talk to you about our new 5-year strategy. David.
Thank you, Sue. Good morning, everyone, and if you're watching us online, morning to you as well. I've just been watching a bit of it on my iPad down there, so it is all working, and there's a few questions coming in, so that's great, so welcome. I'm just going to take a few minutes really talking about the future. Sue's outlined a little bit about where we've come over the last year, but we've done a lot of work with the board, with our members, with clinicians over the last few months, really looking at where we feel the charity needs to go over the next 5 years. And we've entitled it, as the slide says there, Delivering Greatest Impact. And that's a term that we're using more and more in the charity about what we want to really deliver over the next 5 years. So I thought I'd start with this one, which might look a bit busy, but it is a very simplistic way of looking at the sort of journey, and I hate that word, but I can't think of a better one to use, that people may go on when they are diagnosed with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. You'll start on the top left-hand side there. You'll have some symptoms. You may not realise you have those symptoms, so you may not go along to a GP. Some people may go along to a GP and then kick about in that space for quite some time before they're referred. But actually, those symptoms are the things that will drive people to usually their GP, which is the gateway to the health service. If it's really acute, you may rock up at A&E. Some people may go to their pharmacists. But once you get to your GP, there's a whole load of things that will happen there, and hopefully, quickly and speedily, you will be referred to secondary care, where you will see a consultant gastroenterologist, and there will be a whole load of tests and investigations, which takes us to the top of the first line. Then you will be given a diagnosis. Sorry, Mr. Jones, you've got Crohn's disease, or sorry, Mrs. Bloggs, you've got ulcerative colitis, or actually you haven't got these conditions. And then a treatment regime can begin. As you will all know, that treatment regime that may work for one patient may not work for another. So as one gastroenterologist explained to me once, it's a bit suck it and see in terms of the treatment regimes that may work. You've then sadly got it for the rest of your lives, and during that period it's going to flare up, flare down. You may end up requiring surgery. But what we've tried to do, hence the question marks, is really look at where the charity could make the biggest impact. I always say we're sadly not going to fix the NHS. We have to be realistic. We're currently a £5 million charity. We have huge ambition here. How could we really make sure that we focus our efforts to make the greatest impact? And we've been doing a lot of work talking to people over the last few months. We have a new vision, mission and values, which Sue alluded to, which I'm going to introduce you to them in a moment. We did a lot of work earlier this year with focus groups, going out and talking to people, working with the board to really shape what I think is something that we have now that is really exciting in terms of our vision and mission, our values that will guide us over the next 5 years and beyond. The second thing we did, and we always get a phenomenal response to surveys, we had a national survey earlier this year. We got 12,500 responses. Now that is, for me, having worked in other disease areas, breast cancer, heart disease, inflammatory bowel disease is the disease area where I've seen really amazing engagement from the community. And I think 12,500 people responding to a survey to give us a sense of what they felt was important was a really critical part of the listening exercise that we've done to help us shape our priorities over the next 5 years. The clinical engagement that we've had has been great. I've spent a lot of time travelling around the UK, talking to clinical teams, talking to gastroenterologists. A lot of the team here have been doing also just to help us shape those 5 priorities, which I will talk about in a moment, and really help us to refine them to make sure that we were really focused. So we've had a really good engagement programme of members, supporters, clinicians across the UK, and all of that has obviously been driven by our Board of Trustees and the staff team here. We've had a number of workshops, lots of discussions going on. And what I'm going to do is show you, because it would do it hopefully far better than I could just standing here talking, a new little 2 or 3 minutes, I think it is, video that we've produced, which introduces some of these new elements of where we're going in the future.
How do you transform the lives of hundreds of thousands of people right across the UK and give them hope for a better future? At Crohn's and Colitis UK, this is what we want to achieve for everyone affected by Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Inspired by our fantastic members and supporters, our new 5-year roadmap is shaped by the community, for the community. At the heart is a bold new vision for the charity. Improved lives today, a world free from Crohn's and colitis tomorrow. It won't be easy, but we can succeed. By breaking taboos, by driving pioneering research, by supporting and bringing people together, and by campaigning to improve lives. Together, we are leading the fight against Crohn's and colitis. This is our new mission statement. How do we make it happen? We will focus on 5 areas that we know will deliver the greatest impact over the next 5 years, getting us to where we want to be faster. 1. We want to help everyone understand Crohn's and colitis. Knowledge is power. Understanding unlocks change. No more ignorance, no more stigma, no more isolation. 2. We want to drive world-class research into the disease. We will find and fund pioneering innovation that helps people manage the impact of the disease and to one day eliminate it. 3. We want to support and empower people, helping them manage their lives with Crohn's and colitis. When people have better practical help and emotional support, they can take more control of their condition and live fuller and freer lives. 4. We want high-quality, sustainable clinical care across the UK. We will build productive partnerships, We will give a powerful voice to patients across the UK. We will mobilise our supporters. We will come together, challenge the status quo, and help influence policy, driving up care standards for everyone. 5. We want early and accurate diagnosis for everyone. Let's build stronger partnerships to help people and professionals spot symptoms. Earlier treatment and support will help deliver better outcomes. Through all of this work, we will be guided by our values every day of the year. We are ambitious. We are compassionate. We are stronger together. After all, when we stick together, we know that we can do amazing things. Right now, we need you more than ever to help grow our charity and raise vital funds. Together, we are a community of volunteers, members, supporters, researchers, partners, innovators, change makers, listeners, campaigners, fundraisers, and friends. Together, we can be an even more powerful voice for hundreds of thousands of people across the UK. Together, we are Crohn's and Colitis UK.
So there it is. We're really pleased. That's hot. You are the first. That's the first viewing we've had of that. So we're really pleased with those. We would really welcome feedback from either if you're in the room or if you're watching us online, because we want to refine that next week, probably, or the week after, and that will become our new sort of video that we use to promote where we're going over the next 5 years. Now, clearly, there's a lot that sits behind that, but just to sort of briefly sum up, that's our new vision and our mission. And the values that we will be guided by over the next 5 years and beyond. And we're really pleased. There was nothing wrong with the old ones, but we believe that these are actually ones that will really take us on the trajectory that we all want to see the charity go in. And then the big 5, as I call them, are the sort of 5 areas that we're going to focus on, and obviously the work that we're doing now, which will lead into our 2018 operational plan, will really start to fine-tune what are we actually going to do in order to achieve these, because there's some big ticket items in there. But I think where we got to through that consultation period, through lots of discussion, debate, we're actually bang on in terms of the 5 areas that the charity should be really focusing on over the next 5 years. There is one that sits along the bottom of that, which underpins everything, and Sue and Tom have both spoken to this. We can't do anything without money. So, as Sue mentioned, the board have agreed to invest more money in some of our fundraising in order to grow our income, with a really close eye on the fact that we get that return on investment of 4 to 1 or even better. So that will underpin, the more money we have, the more things that we can do, the more people we can help. So they're the big 5. That's all I wanted to say. There is an opportunity for questions, but just the final point I just wanted to make is I've been with the charity now 4.5 years, and it's been a tremendous privilege to lead the charity with the board. We have a fantastic staff team here, but we shouldn't become complacent. You know, all of us know that there is a huge task still ahead of us. And the next 5 years, I think we're really now beginning to set ourselves up to really deliver the greatest possible impact we can over the next 5 years. So thank you to you if you're in the room. Thank you to you if you're watching us online. We're really looking forward to working with you to see the charity go from strength to strength over the next 5 years. Thank you very much. Before I hand back to Sue, just to close, has anyone got any questions? So, yes. You'll need the microphone, otherwise there will be a silence online.
Okay, fine. Thanks. I speak as a parent and member. Looking at the journey on the 3rd or 4th slide of your presentation, I wanted to ask you whether or not there's a particular area of the NHS sort of treatment journey where you find resistance. It's almost as if there are blockages in terms of the way a patient or a potential patient interfaces with the NHS. And I know from our own experience that sort of, you talked about kicking around the GP surgery part of the journey. I mean, where is the resistance exactly?
So how long have we got?
No.
So I think there's one key word in that, which is variation, because actually in some areas you see really gold standard ways of working, clinical teams really engaging well with patient groups in order to drive quality improvement in services. The gulf that there is still in every disease area actually between primary care and secondary care is huge, and actually some of the work that we've already started doing sort of as a precursor to the early and accurate diagnosis is we've joined forces with the Royal College of General Practitioners, and we've kicked off something called a Spotlight project, which over the next year is just focusing a real spotlight on inflammatory bowel disease in primary care. So I don't think there is, sadly, I'd love to be able to say the blockage is here or the reluctance is there, but actually it's such a huge, complex area. And going back to where one of our priorities there is about driving high-quality clinical care, we have to focus really hard on where we think that will be. One of the other things that we've started looking at is we had the first meeting last week of something called IBD UK. So IBD UK has brought together 18 different organisations. It's brought together the Royal College of Physicians. It's brought together the surgeons, Royal College of Surgeons. It's brought together the British Society of Gastroenterology, the pathologists, the physicians, into one powerful group called IBD UK. And if we are going to influence and address some of the issues that you can see and many other people have to live with day in, day out, I think that potentially could become a powerhouse to drive change, to influence, and to get some of the changes that we need to happen in fundamentally what we all know is a broken National Health Service. So I wish I could answer that very quickly and easily. Helen's got a hand up here. She may be able to add to that. Thank you, Helen.
Yeah, I think just one other thing I would add to that is the campaign that we're running at the moment for more IBD nurses, because if there's one person who is best placed to unblock some of those blockages, it's often the nurse.
Yeah. That's a really, really good. Thank you for that, Helen. Because we love nurses. Patients love nurses. The consultants love nurses. There's just nowhere near enough of them, and the ones that we have are seriously overworked. So, which is why we launched last year the more IBD nurses, better care campaign, and we will continue to do that going forward. So, any other questions, Jane? Anything? Yes. Thank you for waiting for the microphone.
Thank you, David. I'm a member of the charity. My question is around fundraising and corporate fundraising and also working with pharmaceuticals. How are they helping the charity, and how is the charity engaging with those particular bodies?
Okay, so we have, and Sam Affim, our Director of Income Generations, if he might want to add to this. So we currently do work with a number of pharmaceutical partners. In every charity I've ever worked in, it's a very fine balance you tread with pharmaceuticals. They clearly have a lot of money, and what we try to do through our corporate partnerships, and actually Jo Pearce, who's our corporate partnership manager, is also here as well, so if you wanted to chat with her afterwards, she'd be able to fill you in. It's not just about money. Money is important, but actually the partnership in its best sense is actually when you're working on common goals. So some of the partnerships we've had have, yes, given money to the charity, but they have helped us deliver in true partnership, specific areas of work. So we do work with them. It's always a fine balance, and actually part of the work that Sam and the team have been doing is looking at how we grow every element, but looking at those areas we traditionally haven't done well enough or enough of in order to grow that income. Is there anything you want to add to that, Sam?
Just that over the last couple of years, we've slightly changed our strategy of working with pharmaceutical partners, because previously we had a very wide range of pharmaceutical partners where we were getting money for little bits of work. And to build on David's point, we wanted to ensure that everything that we did with the pharmaceutical partners was actually something we would have done even if there wasn't money attached, where there was a real synergy between the direction that we wanted to go and that we were leading on that, and the direction that they wanted to go. So we've now moved to having 7 or 8 more significant partnerships for a longer term, where we've got predefined endpoints that meet our charitable aims, which is great.
Yeah, and I think that longer term, we signed up last year, I think it was, our first 3-year partnership. We'd always just done 1 year. What are we going to do this year? What are we going to do? So that 3 years works for us. And if you're out there listening online, any of our pharmaceutical partners, 3-year partnerships is what we're after. So you heard it here first. Okay. Yes, another question in the middle there.
Hi there, I'm a member, volunteer, sufferer. Last week, just touched on what's been discussed there. I took part in an IBD advisory panel, which was actually advertised through the website. There was 4 of us there, and the amount of information that they took away and I took away from them was just unbelievable. And they went away from that meeting being, their thought process, the perfect contact in the UK is yourselves. It's not going to go anywhere unless I can start linking in with yourselves, so hopefully that will happen.
Yeah, well, good. Thank you for going along to that panel. You know, the power of the patient voice, which you will have seen on the animation, is absolutely key, whether it's in those advisory panels, whether it's with our work with NICE. This year we've seen ustekinumab, one of the new biological treatments, come through NICE, and actually some of the clinicians who were advising on that said it probably wouldn't have gone through without that patient voice being on the panel. So that's a really key part of our work. And I've only just managed to say ustekinumab. so I thought I'd say it twice. Any final questions then before we move on and hand back to Sue? But thank you very much indeed then, Sue.
Thank you, David. We would welcome feedback on today. Obviously, those of you in the room, we can talk afterwards. And if you're online, if you'd like to give us your feedback, that would be fantastic. All that remains is for me to thank those of you who've travelled to be with us in St Albans, and thank you to those people online to have the interest and to support us in that way. I hope we have conveyed our optimism for the future growth and impact of Crohn's and Colitis UK. Thank you very much and all the best. Yes. I didn't want to invite the people online. If they all rushed here, we wouldn't have had enough.